There has been an ongoing gag that Deltarune fans eventually go crazy and come up with some insane theory due to the passage of time between chapters. And listen, I don't blame them. When you have a game as hyped up as Undertale having a possible spin-off with chapters broken up over several years, you too would stand outside Toby Fox's residence waving around an acoustic guitar like a caveman and muttering that you're in the house like carpet, like some cultish chant. Plus, I'm sure there's some other important world events that I'm failing to mention that would make us cling to an incomplete game like a necessary inhaler. And, well, as somewhat, kind of, sort of, maybe an Asriel fan, of course I would have a theory. And maybe because I'm agonizingly optimistic and biased towards a fictional character that was made 10 years ago, this theory does not involve the goat dying. And the theory itself is as stable as my mental health. Not very. This all started out as a concept I crafted as a TikTok AU back in 2020. When people picked up hobbies, invited people over for Animal Crossing, I ended up cosplaying a Deltarune Asriel that would be revealed as a goth edgelord who has experienced the world. A once gifted golden boy is now turned dark after leaving the comforts of his small town and experiencing adulthood. He's laced with unresolved trauma and he shatters the expectations held by his friends and family. And it's fun to cosplay. It's not often I wear demonias and trip pants as part of a cosplay. Of course, I dove into a little bit of fanon of Hyperdeath-Asriel as well, enacting this flirty, immature goat boy that desperately needs a hug. Lightly, I involved some loose fanon of Deltarune involving Asriel's connections with Des, his relationship with his sibling, and how on earth he'll react if Chris truly falls in love with Ralze in this game. As I looked at the game again and fell into the rabbit hole of Deltarune theories, I realized my AU was starting to have some roots, especially when this theory is branched along my personal favorite theory, which is the Burger Pants Night theory. Seriously, check it out. There's a link in the description. It's great, and it's really entertaining. As I watched the explanation of Noelle's final role, my own theory hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew in my heart I had to make this video before Deltarune arrives. I'm not going to play through the game like I did through my last videos, for everyone's sanity, but to my boyfriend who had never played this game, I'm going to quickly summarize the first 2 chapters of Deltarune. Here's a timestamp for everybody else who just wants to get down to the details. I promise, it will be a lot shorter than my last video. In fact, I could do it less than 2 minutes. Deltarune is not a sequel to Undertale, but it does star a lot of the same characters. Instead of being a fallen human, you are the younger sibling to Asriel, and you live with the goat family. Well, kinda. Toriel and Asgore are still divorced in this universe. Toriel drives you to school and tells you Asriel is coming home from college in about a week. During your class, you are partnered with the school bully Susie for a group project. This does not go well. When you get more chalk for the classroom chalkboard and Susie's lunchbox, you are both teleported to a world within the closet, a la The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You run into a mage-like character named Ralze. He tells of a legend of 3 heroes who help close their fountains for prophecy reasons. When Susie is like that, she decides to be a villain and join a spade-like character named Lancer. While both of them want to be villains, both of them realize that they don't want to kill each other. They rejoin Ralze and Chris to fight against Lancer's dad, the king, who wants to kill them. Lancer's dad, instead, is jailed. The fountain for this world is closed. When you and Susie leave the world, you realize that everyone you interacted with is a toy, and it might be a dream. Your mother is relieved that you made a new friend. You go home, you go to bed, you rip the soul out of your chest and throw it into a birdcage, and then flash a knife menacingly. That is the end of chapter 1. You're still with me? Okay, cool, thanks. Here's chapter 2. Next day, it is revealed that the knife was used to absolutely murder that butterscotch cinnamon pie. You return to school, and Susie is eager to get back into the closet. But you and Susie are stopped by a very closeted Noelle who wants to see you at the library. After a short talk with Ralze, who banishes you from Castletown to go finish your homework, you both head over to the library, and it's another fountain. You are now in a cyber world. Whoa! Noelle is in this world, along with Birdly, who can be accurately described as this meme. You meet the Queen, who is literally an anime villain. She captures Noelle, and Birdly wants to join the Queen. Eventually, Chris splits up with the other party members and teams up with a runaway Noelle. While teamed up with Noelle, there are several notable events that build her courage. Eventually, the entire group is prisoned. After breaking out, we learn of Birdly's need to be perfect at absolutely everything, even if he doesn't quite know everything. We fight the Queen in her normal form, and then we play Punch-Out for a little while. There is a big talk about how bad it is to open more dark fountains. So Chris seals the dark fountain, and Noelle, Birdly, Susie, and Chris all return to the library. After returning to their hometown, Susie is invited by Toriel to stay over Chris's house. While prepping dinner, Chris goes to wash their hands, and Chris rips out their soul again. They escape through the window as we listen to Toriel and Susie talk. Eventually, Chris returns to the bathroom and puts her soul back in their body, much like everyone who needed to collect themselves in the bathroom after hearing how's the job going? When are you going to have grandkids for the 100th time at Thanksgiving? After Susie and Chris fall asleep watching TV, Toriel calls the police to inform them that she saw something outside of the house and found her car tires slashed. Wasn't that big of a danger though, because Toriel also takes a little nap too. Later, in the middle of the night, Chris wakes up, creates a dark fountain, and cut to black, followed by the most terrifying music to play at 3 a.m. in a dark room. Here's the music. I understand a lot of this is going to be gibberish, but let's set the scene here. You have a small town where everybody knows everybody. Anything that happens spreads pretty quickly across town. Relationships, weakening health, and even how the kids are doing. Enter Toriel and Asgore, two parents doing their best to raise their kids. There seemed to be some incident where the two were driven apart, and they don't seem to be on happy terms. The lady at the diner states that the family used to have lunch together on Sundays after service, but after the divorce, it was just Chris and Asriel. So this event was definitely before Asriel went off to college. I wouldn't be surprised if the divorce happened around the time that Asgore left the police force. Enter the kids, Asriel and Chris. We're unsure if and when Chris was introduced, but judging by some older memories, Chris and Asriel were both incredibly young when they became siblings. The game initially gives the impression that Chris is this blank slate, similar to Frisk, but as we play the game, there are some characteristics that shine through. Chris seems to like playing the piano, as hinted in Noelle's blog, and in some of the game's dialogue, like their search history. Chris isn't intimidated by threats on their life, and they seem to be relatively close to Noelle and Caddy, and Chris is known as weird to everybody else. What's beautiful about this change from Undertale to Deltarune's universe is that we're starting to get real clues about the character we're controlling. I really want to emphasize the word control because it almost seems like we're grabbing a hold of this vessel and steering them to our own destiny. And it's heavily implied that they don't like this at all. There is a person with a life, a personality that is not our own. So now that we have some breadcrumbs from Chris, let's talk about Asriel. We know a lot about Asriel through Toby Fox's world building of Deltarune. From the many awards hung on his side of the room, the conversations of various townsfolk, and even how others react to Ralsei, it's clear that Asriel is kind of a legend in this town. There are many stories of Asriel going to church, hanging out with his friends, his relationships, and even people wishing they can join Asriel wherever he is. But we also know that Chris is around Asriel a lot. They're incredibly close. Asriel actively takes care of Chris enough for Chris to search on the internet, when does he come home for summer vacation? Asriel is everywhere in this game, even though he's not there, which sounds incredibly familiar. And by learning more about Asriel, we not only learn more about Chris, but we learn about the very town that we're in. It seems like the family goes to church quite frequently, to the point where Asriel's voice in the choir seems missing now that he's in college. But growing up, Asriel felt this overwhelming guilt for expressing or doing anything that might be considered sinful. Even a sin so horrible such as
dropping the lizard in the pit to jump high.
He went on to confess for Chris's sins, which were more terrible, like
dropping the lizard on purpose.
But he wouldn't be free from these sins. As Asriel got older and started dating, he got caught kissing a girl, and he got sent to church every single day for an entire week. Speaking of committing sins, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The How to Draw Dragons book residing on the family bookshelf. This book is described as having a mauve dragon wearing lipstick, and the clothes being immodest. This book is under Asriel's name, and Toriel is aware of Asriel's overdue book that's apparently accumulated debt. This book is 2,583 days overdue, which is about 7 years and 4 weeks. If this is the case, and Asriel is about 18 right now, this puts him at 11, 12, and it seems about right. This is around the time where people are finding out about the birds and the bees. And this correlates with Asriel's search history. In the cyber world in Chapter 2, we are sent to the dungeon with several things each character has searched on the internet to occupy them forever and make them feel more at home. We get several rooms for NPCs, and interestingly enough, we get a room for Asriel. When we approach the door, in the very, very few instances in this game of blocking control to the player, we are unable to see what's in the room. Chris purposely closes her eyes, enters the room, and leaves the room. Now, I think some people are a little misguided here. Some people have speculated that in the Asriel might be dead theory, that since Ralsei doesn't have a room in this mansion and Asriel does, Asriel's dead and Chris cannot bear to look in the room, so they cover their eyes. Let me ask you a simple question. If you had an older or younger sibling and you had the opportunity to look at their search history, let alone have their search history come to life, would you look? Would you look? Would you want to see the various vices of your own brother? This is emphasized greatly by the fact that if Susie is present in your party and she looks in, she says, verbatim, ha ha ha, you better hope I never meet him. It's and I don't like the implications with Susie. But to bring this back, this isn't the only thing with Asriel's computer that we should be focusing on. In Chapter 2, we get information that Asriel worked on epic games, including an angel with rainbow wings, which, yes, that might be a throwaway line that references Undertale, but when we notice that the game has never been published, this seems like another thing that Asriel is hiding away. He's keeping a lot of things to himself, much like his relationship with Des. Des is an incredibly interesting character that we've only really gotten tidbits about. definitely highlighted in some of our previous newsletters. Des's family and the Dreamer family seem to be incredibly close, interacting with each other a lot growing up. We hear a lot from Des's younger sister, Noelle. From Noelle's dialogue and the story beats throughout Deltarune, it seems like they have a pretty strict and slightly absent mother and a cool but slightly dying dad. One of the most important lines of dialogue is Noelle describing her experiences being out in the forest beyond the graveyard with Chris, Asriel, and Des. Noelle is being comforted by Des, who is wearing Asriel's jacket, and I'm gonna say it right now, I think they're dating. They have to be dating. And with the implications that Des is not present and Asgore is no longer in the police force and a pretty strained relationship between both the families, I'm personally in the Des is dead camp. Which, with Des being dead, the divorce, trying to be good in the eyes of the Lord, caring for his sibling, trying to do good in high school, that's a lot of responsibilities for a teenager. And again, we're adding another layer of Asriel to the pile. Considering the dynamics of both Toriel and Noelle's mother, a trip to the graveyard in the middle of the night might not be the ideal situation for their children. We hear dialogue from the other villagers proudly stating they dated Asriel, but we do not hear a single peep about Des. Considering how strict Toriel is to Asriel kissing a girl, or how she even grounded Chris for staying a half hour late at school, I'd imagine Asriel kept these pent-up emotions inside and maybe even hid their relationship from Toriel. Which is why I want to circle back on a constant running theme in Deltarune, which is shitty parenting. This has spawned a lot of well-documented videos talking about the parental dynamics, which I definitely recommend you check out. For the sake of this video, I'm going to keep things short. Susie's parents aren't present at all. Susie is a bully who eats things that really shouldn't be consumed. When she is first greeted into Toriel's house, it's almost like she's stunned that there's an actual ceiling in the house. Noelle has a relaxed dad who seems to be going through some difficult medical challenges and can't be there to protect her from Noelle's mom, who runs the town and isn't that nice of a person. Toriel is overbearing and will put her own feelings over her own kids, even throwing away a bouquet that Chris offers to their mom because Asgore probably gave it to them. Asgore is struggling. He's in a flower shop he can barely run and misses his wife terribly. In chapter 1, we deal with the king that slightly reflects Susie's desire to use violence as an answer. And in chapter 2, we deal with the queen who desires power and control, and Noelle is confronted with a mother-like figure. Despite these extremely exaggerated enemies, every person who falls into these dark worlds seems to love being in these universes. Noelle gains the courage to confront what terrifies her. Susie has a connection, a friend, someone who believes in her and trusts her. I can't help but be drawn to Ralze's line describing the castle inside the dark world as a second home. And let's not forget the theme song for Deltarune, which has the line, "Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark." And this definitely leaks into the real world as well. There are a lot of mentions of people leaving town or going to join others outside of town. From Burger Pants wishing he could go to theater school with Asriel to Noelle wanting to join Des in the big city. And of course there are characters in the town that have made this town their home and that's where they're going to stay. But to our main characters, they want more than this. They want an escape, a reality beyond their own. As long as these fountains continue to produce and have a means to be closed, they can continue to live in this fantasy, this dreamlike world where they feel like they have some sort of control. They're the hero. And Chris, whether they like it or not, is thrown into the spotlight, being the very catalyst for this entire story. And after learning so much about Asriel and all of his achievements, we finally learn more about Chris. Not only this, but Chris is guided by a representation of who Chris wanted to be. In the dark world, normal, everyday items are given a life of their own. Toriel mentions that at a young age, Chris wondered when they would grow horns. Toriel gifted them a pair of red devil horns that eventually went missing. Who do we see at the end of chapter 1? A short goat boy who is smart, kind, and fawned over by everybody. Who else is smart, kind, and fawned over by everybody? Plus, come on, he definitely inherited Toriel and Asgore's naming conventions. Take Asriel, rearrange all the letters, and bam, you have Ralze. And this is super clear in Chris's Dark World room, where trophies align their side of the room. We don't know what's going on with Chris, but from the various dialogue that we see in the townsfolk, a lot of people think that Chris is this freak. And from the very beginning, unbeknownst to everyone else, this soul is literally taking a major toll on their life. The animation of Chris ripping their soul out is violent. They literally rip it from their bodies to go do what they need to do. If they had that rusty birdcage sitting in the middle of the bedroom and nothing else, how long have they truly been dealing with this? It's a challenge that Chris has to conquer every single day of their entire life. I wouldn't be surprised if Asriel felt some slight resentment to their sibling at one point or several points in time, especially during a time where Asriel is navigating a divorce. His girlfriend might be dead. His dreams of escaping the small town and wanting to be something more resembles the dreams of the main cast. He wants to graduate high school. He wants to get to college. Trying to take take care of a sibling who deals with their own difficult challenges adds an extra weight on Asriel's shoulders, even if these challenges are unintentional and out of Chris's control entirely. With Asriel's strive to be perfect at everything, without tarnishing his reputation or ruining his hopes and dreams, it almost seems like a wish upon a glow-in-the-dark star. So we have the foundation of Asriel's character, their relationship with their younger sibling, their friends, their family. What do you think will happen in Chapter 7? Well, I don't want Asriel to be the Laura Palmer of Undertale, dying in absolutely every universe that Toby Fox creates, but I want to point out one more important line. It's right at the start of the game, and it's the sentence after we realize that Asriel is indeed alive and he's actually in college. But I wonder, after the excitement of university, will he still enjoy coming home to this little town? And I think the timing of this statement is really interesting. We're doing a drive by the town, meet all the characters, and the line seems like a line out of a cozy show about family, but I can't help but reflect on my own personal experiences of coming home to a small town after coming back from college. I think Toriel's line at the beginning is foreshadowing. I think the handlebars will be ripped out of Asriel's bicycle and he'll come home with more knowledge about the world around him. How he'll come back remains a mystery, but I've got some branching theories and fanon about how he'll appear. There are quite a few townsfolk who talk about Asriel, but one of note is Braddy, who, definitely lives up to her name. Braddy is Asriel's first kiss, Asriel's ex-girlfriend, and might be an over-exaggeration here, almost Asriel's wife. I hate that reality. She mentions some important elements that I want to touch upon. When Chris asks to hang out with the older kids, she manipulates Chris to buy them a bunch of food as a bargaining chip, which is her fond memory of Chris. There is one line I want to put weight in. If you interact with the trash can that's beside her in the alley, she yells at you for touching her garbage, and then she follows up with, "God, living with Azzy made you weird," which that sucks. That sucks to hear. You would think if you dated someone for a certain amount of time, they would express a sense of understanding to Chris's flight. Why it doesn't matter that they're different, that they're still part of the Dreamer family. Hell, it's Asriel's family. Who knows if her behavior is what broke them off, which wouldn't surprise me, honestly. But the fact that Asriel is somewhat complicit with Braddy, treating Chris like shit, is noticeable. It really shouldn't be ignored. So this theory branch is what I like to call, lovingly of course, the Asriel theory. Get it? Because he's an ass. A few text posts on Tumblr really planted this idea in my mind, both of them emphasizing that while we know Asriel from past experiences and even Asriel in Undertale, he might be wildly different than the Asriel that we meet in Chapter 7. We're already seeing changes with some of the notable characters coming from Undertale to Deltarune, so I wouldn't be surprised if Asriel was wildly different in this game. He might be reminiscent of Eddie's older brother from Ed and Eddie, who is like the literal worst. That episode gave me nightmares, I swear. And as much as I want Asriel to be super cool and charming, I kind of like this idea of Asriel being a mirror to Susie in Chapter 1, kind of a bully, and maybe having some sort of redemption arc at the end of this game. Another branch is nerdy, normal college Asriel, just a tired, passionate student who is just getting by, and hell, he's doing okay. Maybe he has a human roommate, and maybe he's hanging out with Papyrus at college. He'll come home, and while he'll still be a little burned out, he'll still be the Asriel that everyone knows and loves. And the final branch of fandom theory, which is this, and it's also my personal favorite, Goth Asriel. Maybe he'll arrive with some badass haircut and a new goth wardrobe taken in by his college experiences. Listen, there's gotta be a reason why they discontinued that black Deltarune shirt. Plus, just like the fanon of Goth Asriel is great. Think of Hyperdeath-Asriel. I'm biased, sue me. Regardless of his personality and the final aesthetic, my personal theory is that Asriel will revisit some of this trauma that he's dealt with in the past, along with the acceptance that the old Asriel can't come back. What I'm personally hoping is that there is an arc of compassion for Chris, realizing how much Chris leans on their older brother and the guilt for the feelings of resentment towards Chris during the times that Chris couldn't control their soul. Plus, probably a really awkward interaction with Ralze. Real awkward. To slightly tack on to the great theory about the Burger Pants Knight and everyone being the knight, I want to quickly talk about Noel. I think with Asriel's experiences with the outside world, being this big star that everyone looks up to that he'll eventually let down, I personally think he'll be one of the few people to help Noel from absolutely destroying the world or creating too many dark fountains. She's gonna go through hell in this game. Like, I just know it. She's way too nice. She's way too sweet. She's gonna go through the ringer. I'm sensing a dead dad, an absent mom who puts politics first, and these insane expectations because she's the daughter of a mayor. forever. It's a definite beat the cutie trope, and it seems to slightly mirror Asriel's past, not only in Deltarune, but in Undertale too. I think with Susie's feelings for Noelle and Asriel bringing Noelle comfort for her deceased sister, I think those would be the catalyst to bring her back down to Earth. Maybe he'll even convey a message that despite these fantasy worlds being comforting, they are simply just fantasy. Falling into these worlds forever could lead to some really, really harmful circumstances. You won't be able to heal if you continue to bury yourself into these worlds. I think he'll convey a really mature message that sometimes you need to tackle these harder concepts head on. And the smaller stuff that comes with like being in high school and popularity and all of that won't matter as much once you get into the real world. I think by showing Asriel's true colors and show him breaking the expectations set by his entire town will inspire Noelle. She can fall in love with the high school bully. She can continue to find mysteries and glitches in her favorite games. She can heal from the loss of her sister and potentially her father and not follow in her mother's footsteps. She can be the woman that she wants to be. Now, before we quickly wrap up, what about the Snowgrave route? Just a quick note for my baby. Snowgrave is the genocide route of Deltarune where you, via Chris, control Noelle to basically kill all the enemies and even her classmate, Birdly. If we're really breaking the cutie in this story and we let Gaster make his full appearance, who he's been hovering over this goddamn game, I think there might be a very real possibility that Asriel realizes his actions in other universes. Imagine learning about your fate in all of these other universes, where you live, you die, you become God, you fail, and, well, maybe, just maybe, that Twin Peaks reference will be, as real as it gets.
Dropping the lizard on purpose. Dropping the lizard in the pit to jump high.
It's really funny.
Dropping the lizard in the pit to jump high. Dropping the... Sorry. Okay. Ooh, this is a long one. Okay. I'm a professional. Dropping the lizard on purpose. Dropping the lizard.